Hello friends, nice of you to join me. Thank you very much. Today we're going to be talking about obviously some new Nikon news. We've got lots of tips from camera gear and accessories and a whole lot of little personal projects that I've been involved in, which I just want to update you on so you know the sort of progress and work I'm trying to achieve. So we're going to start off with this thing you see right in front of you, which is it's really just a simple straw mat. And I've purchased these two quite large ones. They're about 1 metre by ½ a metre long. And you may have remembered back on this bench over here, what I had on the side there with the lamps, where all my accessories were. I had 4 little coasters, if you like, and they were this sort of material. Problem was, every time I went to bump or move something, they slid around and went out of place and creased up and looked pretty rotten. So what I decided to do is get rid of those 4 and just get these 2 very large ones. So I've got one on this table area here, which means every time I pick something up, it doesn't move and shuffle around. And then I've got one large one, which I'm going to be using really as a product photography platform. So I'll show you some illustrations of some photos I just took before I made this video, just to illustrate what I was talking about. So you'll see a photo of a little car and you'll see a photo of a Nikon camera and lens. And what you can do is you can just use it as a nice bland flat surface to have as the base for your backdrop. I like it because it's a neutral colour, and what I've done is I've varnished them but then scuffed them over with a scourer, which I'll demonstrate. So you varnish them first to seal them so they never get stained. So let's say, for example, you're taking photos of some products, maybe it's red wine or something like that. If you're taking a photo of wine that drips onto the mat, we've got a big pink stain in the middle of it, it looks terrible, and it's very hard to get out of a wood surface. Sort of sucks it right in, doesn't it? So I've used a floor varnish in order to seal this mat. Then what I've done is I've gone over with a scourer and make sure that I've taken most of the shine off. Now I used a satin finish anyway, so it wasn't extremely shiny, but just to go over with a scourer just takes that reflective light thing off, and then of course you can use flash or LED lighting and it doesn't flare up too badly. But a little bit of a sheen is nice because it protects it. It's actually not a bad look, but I was just showing you what sort of thing I'm doing at the moment, a little project as you like, and this could be an interesting thing for you. So these things were purchased online on eBay. I think they're about $20 a mat, and then it was another $20 for the sealer, so it wasn't a very expensive project. And I've got something that I know now will last me forever. This thing is going to last a very long time because it's sealed. I did about 3 coats of sealer and then scuffed it, and this is going to last me forever. So I just thought I'd run through that. I'll show you a few images. I did take a photo of a little car and a camera, and I'll just pop them up on the screen so you can see basically what it looks like and what I use it for. But for now, that's all I really wanted to illustrate with this. But what I also wanted to show you, I can show you that I'm using my mobile phone. So what I've got is, well, I upgraded my phone recently from a Samsung Galaxy S9 to a Samsung Galaxy S21. Now, it's not the brand newest phone. The latest one coming out in 23 is the 23 model. This is the 21 model, so it's about 18 months old, but it's still very good, and it cost me only, I think it was about $550 Australian. So I was able to get a reconditioned version. It was pretty cheap. Now, what am I using this phone for here? I'm using the phone not only because I needed a phone, of course, to make communication, but I got the phone as a backup camera. So I have my camera, my ZFC here with my 35mm lens, and that's sort of framing the whole scene and taking the video. And then when I need a close-up of something, so I bring something in and I want to illustrate and show and say, look at this, rather than keep relying on putting it up to my chest so it's in focus, what I can do now is just have it down here on the table, and what's happening is this camera now is immediately focusing in on this, making it a nice clean sharp image, and it's just focusing at this, basically this area, so it gives a nice little close-up. So I can go back and forth from camera to the phone and use that footage in 4K to give a nice close-up of what I'm showing you. And I just thought that saves me trying to zoom in, which is a pretty cruddy image when you try and do that. Never get the framing right either. So anyway, I'll just put that away for now, but I was just showing you the mat initially and the backdrop potential. So right now, I've really finished talking about the mat. There's enough of that. I'll just put this away now if you don't mind. Sorry if you heard a bit of rustling noise there. So we're back onto just our simple timber table, and that's fine for when I'm just doing general discussions. So today what we're going to be talking about is a few things that Nikon have released that I'd like to discuss. They've added into the roadmap about 6 different lenses, and these 6 different lenses have been on the roadmap for quite a long time, so it's not particularly great, revelationary news, but it is exciting to see that it looks like they are very soon to release the 85 1.2. So that's obviously going to be the sister or brother lens to this 50 1.2 that I have here. Now that's a terrific little product, and if I just show it up, and I'll bring it close in so I can illustrate about that camera setup, that backup projection. If I have this lens here, you can see basically the size and weight of it, and it's quite heavy and it's quite a thick unit. Now the 85 is probably just going to be a little bit broader. So as you see here, you see the dimensions here of where the hood is, and it's inverted in on the lens. That's probably how thick the 85 will be from my impressions of it online. So it's going to be a little bit thicker, but I don't think it's going to be much longer or taller, as it were. Just probably as thick as this, and then of course the lens hood would be proportionally out a little bit more if you inverted it, such as this one is. So I just thought I'd bring that out, and I thought, you know, I'm excited about the 85 1.2. Now I've owned the 85 1.8. It was a brilliant lens, but I just would like to have something with a little bit more shallowness and also the brightness factor too, which would be very handy. So to match these two and have a brother and sister lens combination would be great. The 35 1.2 undoubtedly will come out very shortly as well afterwards, maybe middle of the year, but quite frankly I'm not sure what to do with something like that. I'm not sure of its application. I'm using a 35mm 1.8 right now to film with, and I find that perfect. I find it just the right amount of brightness and you know, bokeh and etc. So for 35mm you're never going to get everything out of focus, or it's not very practical to try. You get a little bit of distortion when you're coming in close, and of course it is a wide angle lens, and generally you're doing things like landscape or group photography where shallow depth of field isn't that relevant. And of course the situation is I have a LED light panel up now, and it's 180 watt light with a diffused panel in front of it, and that gives a nice beautiful soft glow of light. But what's interesting about it now is I've got it on 30% of its full power. So it's not at 100%, it's only at 30%, and already the image is very bright. So that's the thing about the 1.8 aperture, it's quite bright inside even. And so if I had the 1.2, well, I'd have to basically almost turn the light off. It'd be down to about 10%. And so it just gets, well, it's handy to have that, I suppose, as an option. But having a light that will go 3 times more powerful than it is now, it doesn't seem much point in trying to get a brighter aperture really in something like a 35mm for my application. Maybe for you it's great. For me, I just can't see myself wanting it, but the 85, yeah, definitely excited about that one. So when we're talking about Nikon lenses and new releases, they've recently released the 40mm f2, and it's a little compact lens, you know, just a little bit larger than this little kit lens for the ZFC. And well, what do I think of this lens? Well, I've got it in retro styling now, which is pretty nice. So it sort of matches the 28mm 2.8 little pancake lens they had, which was in retro styling as well. And I'd previously owned that lens, and it was a fantastic lens actually. Very good, lightweight, and worked well. Had a little plastic mount on it, which some weren't too excited about, but personally for something that light, it really just doesn't matter. I mean, when you've got a metal mount on these, or you have a plastic mount, this has got the plastic mount, and you know, because the lens is so lightweight, I mean, it really does weigh next to nothing. So what was that, 150 grams or maybe 200 grams at most? The metal mount is really irrelevant. But certainly it was a great quality lens, that 28mm 2.8, and it was well marketed, and it was exactly everything it said it was. So when you shot it at 2.8, it was sharp at 2.8. Now my discomfort with this 40mm f2, and I have to be honest, I'm not going to pump up Nikon when they've fallen short. At f2, the 40mm f2 is not sharp. I'm telling you right now, it's a little soft. I've owned the lens, so I know what I'm talking about, and I tried it in every configurable way, outside, inside, different lighting, flash, so on, and at f2 it was always just a little bit softer than it should have been. And I know the difference because I own a lot of prime lenses, and I know that when they're wide open they should be still sharp. I know that the 35 that I'm using right now, 1.8, is razor sharp at 1.8. The 50mm 1.8, sharp at 1.8. And the 85 the same, and every other lens I've owned is the same. This 50 1.2, at 1.2 it is razor sharp. And that's exactly how a lens should be. If you market something at f1.8 or f2 or f2.8 or f, you know, whatever it is, it's got to be sharp at that widest aperture, or else why are you marketing as such? You're really deceiving your customers. And I think that's what the case is with that 40mm. Now I might cop a bit of flack and hate from that, but that's just how I feel. I feel that it was soft, and I think it shouldn't be marketed as an f2. It should have always been a 2.8 lens and marketed as such. Because at 2.8 it's quite reasonable, and f4 and so on, great. But at f2 it is just a soft lens, and that's the end of the story. I'm not going to hear any different. So just, even though it looks very attractive in the retro styling now that they've released, and it is quite an inexpensive lens, I just think you're better off with a different purchase. And what am I going to recommend? Well, rather than that one, I recommend you get the 50 1.8. So that is an absolute magnificent Nikon lens. So I'll show you a picture of it. The 51.8 is great value for money. All right, so brand new, it might be a little over $1,000 or thereabouts Australian, but if you purchase them secondhand, which are plenty of secondhand ones on eBay or Amazon you can buy, or on the secondhand stores, you'll find that you get them at really good price. So on average you can get them for around $700 Australian secondhand, and being that the 40mm f2 is about $450, all right, so yes, it is more expensive, nearly double, but you are getting twice the lens. So you're getting what you pay for. Now, it's still relatively light and compact. It has a magnificent 62mm filter, which is exactly the sort of size you want to carry around because it's very versatile. I mean, my 35 is 62mm. If the 50 is 62mm, so it makes it very convenient. You can have a few lenses and they're all often 62mm. So this here, I think it's a great option to have. This is actually a circular ND filter. So I find that a fantastic option to have, to be able to have it various apertures as you turn it and spin it on the dial there on the camera, and that just gives you a lot of convenience. So these filters are fantastic. 62mm on that 50 is a fantastic option to have. Now, if I got anything against compact lenses, you might say, oh, he doesn't like compact lenses, he's a snob or something. Well, no, I'm not. I've owned them all, haven't I? I mean, I have purchased the 28mm Pancake, the 40mm f2, and of course I've got this one here, which is the 16 to 50. Now, this is a fantastic little lens, and I love it. I've still kept it, and I still use it on my ZFC because it's so versatile. It's pretty much equal to a, well, on a full-frame camera, it'd be equal to something like a 25 or 24 to 75 lens, and that's a fantastic range to carry around with you. So is it the brightest aperture lens in the world? No, it is a variable aperture, but it works extremely well, and I'm very happy to have it, and I find it a very useful kit, holiday, traveling around lens. So I've got no problem with Nikon's cheaper lenses. I think they can be really awesome, but just that 40, I'd say stay aware of that one and get the 51.8 instead, because I think it's probably one of the best value for money, bang for your buck lenses that Nikon produce. Razor sharp, very bright, and extremely high quality. So it's something you'll be proud of rather than be a bit squirmish about owning. The next thing I'd like to discuss with you is something else that Nikon have done recently, and that is they've actually started to discontinue their speed lights. So as you know, I have a range of Nikon speed lights. I have this one here, which is the Nikon SB500. It's a great little speed light. I really like it. I think it works incredibly well. It functions awesomely, and I'm very impressed with it. I think it's a great little speed light for a light camera. So when I use it mostly on my ZFC. And it's a terrifically lightweight, versatile little speed light that you can carry around with you. Add a little diffuser to it, which I've got a bit of Velcro around, just add a little diffusing, what I use is a little bounce card on it. And that gives me some very convenient speed lighting as I go, and it's lightweight in the camera bag. So yes, I own them, but this one here has actually been discontinued by Nikon now, and they no longer will be selling them. Now, as you know, I also own a range of these larger professional Nikon speed lights. This is SB900, and I have SB910s as well, and they're great lenses, great speed lights, of course, and I've used them for many years very happily. And I still have 3 of these large units. So I still like them and I still have them, but you may notice I've done a video recently where I've moved on to the Yongnuo speed lights. Now, does that mean that Yongnuo are better than Nikon, or I think that they're magnificent and the bee's knees and what you must have? Well, no, not necessarily at all. What I'm finding is I just think that they're a very good alternative, and they're inexpensive. So should anything go wrong, they're easy to replace and they're affordable to replace. See, this one here was about $250. This is one of their top of the range models. It pretty much does everything, including LED panel with it. But what I've found is that because they're quite inexpensive, if anything does go wrong or you drop them, break them, you can afford to replace them. So as Nikon no longer really produce any of their own speed lights and releasing them at the time being, I'm recommending people do go on to a different brand. Now, I don't care what brand you go on. You can go into Godox, you can go into this Yongnuo brand. It doesn't really make any difference to me which ones you choose. Newer also make them. They're all pretty much of a muchness and the same. Just choose a brand and then stick with it, whatever suits your budget and your personal preference. But I just sort of bring that out, that Nikon have said that they're discontinuing the 500 and the SB5000, which is their newer versions. So, you know, you can imagine you've got no hope at all buying any older versions unless you buy them second hand. So on this subject of buying different things and speed lights, I also wanted to show you these. Now, I'd spoken about these little clips some time ago, and what they are is they're titanium little clips. So you've seen clips before a million times around, but these ones I particularly like because I've used them with the cables. So when I have the battery pack cables, I like to use this very small version. This is the 36mm version, and then they also make this 58mm version. So I use this one here for general bag use and clipping things on and off. Got a bit of weight and size and strength to them because this is very durable. But this size here, this very small one, I use for cables. Has a very small little hole, as you can see there, and that's fantastic for threading cables through, locking them on, and when you want to clip it to your camera, and I've illustrated this before, when you want to clip it on, you can clip it onto any small item, and it clips on nice and strong, and it's not bulky and doesn't get in the way too much. So that's a pretty cool little item. So I just thought I'd bring that out as what I'm buying and what I'm using for. I bought a few more just recently. I bought another 2 of these because I found them so valuable and so versatile. So I wanted to bring those out, little titanium clips. A fantastic little purchase, and they will last you a lifetime. And that's something very important to consider when you're buying camera gear. Look, you're spending, what are you spending on this combination here is about $8,000 Australian. If you're going to spend $8,000 on some camera, does it matter that those clips cost an extra $5 more than a stainless steel one? No. Just buy them. You buy them once and you'll never have to buy them again, and they'll last you a lifetime. So I'm a big believer in buying quality, especially going on eBay and try and find them as affordable as you can. Now that's actually an interesting subject. We talked about eBay purchasing. I buy a lot of stuff from eBay, especially when I can't find new stuff available or it's outrageously priced. Sometimes you can get some great bargains. Let me just illustrate the great bargains you can get. This 50mm 1.2, which I've spoken about many times, and I find that a great lens. This one here I purchased actually second hand on eBay. Now I found this one, someone had purchased it recently, decided that it wasn't for them for whatever reason, or I think it was the middle of COVID time, so they probably were a bit tight for money, maybe their work didn't work out for them as well as they'd like, and they decided to sell it to get some cash in. Now in Australia this was $3,000 plus retail when you bought it new. I purchased it on eBay about, I don't know what it was, 8 months after it was released, and I got it for $2,000. So I got it for only 2/3 of retail value because I hunted around on eBay and got it second hand from someone who couldn't afford to keep it. So their loss was my gain, and they still gained the money that they required. I didn't cheat them in any way. They asked for $2,000, I bought it for $2,000, and so they got what they wanted. So everybody wins. But the point I'm just making is don't be scared to shop around, even for relatively new products online, and you can really get yourself a big bargain. So don't be thinking that that's some sort of a cheapskate way of doing things. It's just making good common commercial sense. If you can buy it cheaper, why wouldn't you? Yes, and just in conclusion, the other thing I'm doing in this room right now that might be a little bit different, and I don't know if you can pick it up, but I'll put it up here, what they call those screens. So you know those folding screens you can buy for privacy in your room to get dressed behind? Yeah, well I can't remember the exact name of them, sorry, but those screens, folding screens, I put up here against my cupboards. And the reason I've done that is because they're a bamboo configuration, which means internally they have lots of little bends and flexes in them as it's weaved. And then of course they're like a W pattern through them, and what this can do is can help a lot with the sound in the room. So it's sort of like a sound deadening equipment in your room, or a sound blanket, because that whole wall on that side is quite flat, and so sound tends to bounce off it unkindly. So I was just trying to see if this helps any way with sound and suppressing any reverberation, and I'm hoping it really helps with the sound. So anything you can do to help with sound or lighting, I'm always big keen for that, and experimenting all the time, chopping and changing, because you never know what'll make a big difference. And the other tiny little difference I've made in the room recently too is I've always had a light on immediately above me. It's just a domed white light immediately above my head. Well, I've decided to turn that off, and the reason being is because, well, my head gets a bit shiny and sweaty under the lights and the heat in the room, and of course it's Queensland summer, and I found that the light directly above me was causing a big a white patch of light on my forehead. So I've decided to turn that off to hope removing that element. So of course I've still got the golden glow of light behind me. I've got an LED panel of gold which sort of backlights me and anything I put on the table up. I've got the white light in front, but I just turned the one off above. Hopefully that doesn't decrease the quality of the vision in any way, but certainly will stop that white patch going on the top of my head, which I thought was very unflattering. So other than that, that's all I've done for the time being. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for joining me, and if there's anything else you want me to discuss at all in the future, future, please leave it in the comments below and I'm happy to bring it up and have a chat about it with you.